Plato, who was a famous Greek philosopher, said about 2,500 years ago that if any of the two classes of society, the merchant class and the military class, advance and seize the rule, the state will be destroyed, will definitely come. His ideas are still of great importance today, and his philosophical insights have had a profound impact on politics, economics, and social structure, business class.
Plato emphasized the dangers of merchant class rule. According to him, businessmen put their own interests first. When businessmen rule, their first priority is to increase their wealth and business. In this type of governance, public interests are put on the back burner and the state system becomes based on concentration of wealth and selfishness.
As a result, inequality increases, public discontent develops, and social unrest ensues. Military class. Plato also described the disadvantages of military rule. According to him, military rulers place more emphasis on warfare and the use of force. When the military class rules, an atmosphere of militancy and repression develops in the state. Such governance suppresses public liberties, destroys democracy, and violates human rights.
As a result of military rule, fear spreads in the state and people lose faith in the government. Plato's ideal state. Plato, in his book The Republic, presented the concept of an ideal state in which the ruling class is called the philosopher king. According to them, a philosopher king is one who makes decisions based on wisdom, morality, and justice. He neither lusts for wealth like a merchant, nor for power like a soldier.
The philosopher king prioritizes public interest and promotes social justice. In the context of the present era, this prediction of Plato proves true even in today's era. In many countries where the business class or the military class is ruling, there are problems like social inequality, corruption, oppression, and popular discontent. In these circumstances, in the light of Plato's ideas,
we need to understand that the main purpose of governance should be public service and the establishment of justice, not the pursuit of personal interests. Plato's words are still a beacon for us today. His insights teach us that governance requires individuals based on the principles of wisdom, justice, and public service. Unless governance is based on such principles, real progress and prosperity will not be possible in the state.
One day, Plato came to his teacher Socrates and said, "Your servant was standing in the market making false statements about you." Socrates smiled and asked, "What was he saying?" Plato replied in an emotional tone, "I was talking about you." Before he could say anything, Socrates silenced him with a gesture of his hand and said,
"Before you say this, put it to the test of 3, analyze it, and then decide whether you should tell me this or not," said Plato, my great teacher. "What is the criterion of 3? Socrates said, "Do you believe that what you are telling me is 100% true?" Plato immediately shook his head in denial. Socrates laughed and said, "Then what will be the use of telling this to you and me?"
Plato looked quietly into Socrates' face, and Socrates said, "This was the first test. Now coming to the second criterion, what you have started to tell me. Is it a good thing?" Plato answered by shaking his head in denial. "Yes, no, this is bad." Socrates smiled and said, "Do you think you should tell your teacher something bad?" Plato again shook his head in denial, as if this does not meet the second criterion, said Socrates.
Plato remained silent. Socrates paused a little and said, "And the last test, tell me what you are about to tell me. Is it beneficial for me?" Plato shook his head in denial and said, "Dear teacher, this is not beneficial for you at all." Socrates laughed and said, "If this is not beneficial to me, then what is the need to tell it?" Plato was worried and started looking left and right.
Plato remained silent. Socrates paused a little and said, "And the last test, tell me what you are about to tell me. Is it beneficial for me?" Plato shook his head in denial and said, "Dear teacher, this is not beneficial for you at all." Socrates laughed and said, "If this is not beneficial to me, then what is the need to tell it?" Plato was worried and started looking left and right.
Socrates, "O Plato, have you ever considered what knowledge is and how we acquire it?"
Plato, I always wonder what the sources of knowledge are. What do you think?
Socrates, knowledge is not easy to define. Many people think that knowledge is what we get from our senses, but is it enough?
Plato, no, perhaps not. Senses sometimes deceive us. So how can we be sure that what we know is really true?
Socrates, exactly. We have to use common sense. Intellect leads us to reality, while senses limit us.
Plato, but can we say that reason is always right? Sometimes common sense can lead us astray.
Socrates, yes, reason can be limited, but it leads us to contemplation. Through reflection, we can raise questions, and through questions, we can come closer to reality.
Plato, is it correct to say that we should use both the senses and the intellect to acquire knowledge?
Socrates, of course, both the senses and the intellect are important, but the most important thing is the questions. Always ask questions. Reflect and never be satisfied that you know everything.
Plato, I understand, master. Only through questions can we gain true knowledge.
Socrates, yes, and remember that the journey of knowledge never ends. Always be learning, asking questions, and seeking truth.
Plato, thank you. Your words have opened the doors of my thinking.
Socrates, Plato, this is the path of the pursuit of knowledge.
Look at yourself carefully in the mirror. If you are beautiful, then do things that do beautify your beauty, and if you are not beautiful, then avoid those things that add to your ugliness. Plato.
He who does not have a taste for books and studies, his mind is like a half-dark, closed street in which new ideas and dreams do not pass. There is no better friend than a book. Books give spirit to the universe, wings to the mind, flight to the imagination, and life to everything. Plato.
When a man is not nurtured properly, he becomes a wild animal to the world. Plato.
One of the major mistakes of man is that he continues to waste his time, sincerity, money, and feelings on inferior people, knowing that the answer will only be competition, disobedience, arrogance, and indifference goes away, commonly called self-pleasure. Plato.
There are three types of people: lovers of wisdom, lovers of honor, and lovers of profit. Plato.
This saying of Plato indicates people's habit of hypocrisy, being hypocritical towards others and lying. It says,
1. Hypocrisy and lies. People who resort to hypocrisy and lies in their lives are unable to see the truth.
2. Recognition of reality. People who have the ability to see the truth beyond hypocrisy and lies have the ability to understand people's beliefs and thoughts.
3. Popular belief. These people know that what the public believes is hard to dismiss as false or hypocritical.
This saying means that those who try to know and understand the truth cannot ignore the opinions of the people and their beliefs. It encourages people to rise above their hypocrisy and lies and recognize the truth, but also says that it is important to understand and respect people's beliefs and opinions.
The point of Plato's statement is that recognizing and understanding truth is important, but at the same time, the importance of people's beliefs and opinions should not be overlooked.